Welcome, everyone, to the Bordeaux Show, our bi-weekly presentation about the region of Bordeaux. I'm Ron Edwards, Master Sommelier and Director of Wine Education for Winebow. Let me introduce your host, Certified Bordeaux Educator TJ Griffin. TJ has held many jobs within the wine industry, from hospitality to wholesale, and even has been in performance arts, which I didn't tell you before, but you might as well know that now. Don't ask him why, because then he gets all upset and he has to perform for you, and he's going to perform for you about Bordeaux instead. So, but throughout his career, what he enjoyed most was learning about wine and sharing that knowledge with others. As corporate wine educator for Winebow, he now enjoys the privilege of doing what he loves full time. And now here to discuss today's topic, the families of Bordeaux, part 2, TJ Griffin.
Hey, Ron.
Hey, good to see you, if only virtually.
Yes, I'm not actually in Bordeaux despite my background.
Me either, although I am on the correct side of the river for this presentation.
Yes, you are, because we're going to be on the right bank and in the Entre-deux-Mers area for today. And I'd like to thank, first of all, the L'École Duvan de Bordeaux, because this presentation was put together by them. I have edited it, but all their cool maps and information and icons are all from them. So thank you to them. They are a great resource for this. And you can check them out as well. I don't think the public has access to all this stuff, but there's still a lot of great stuff. So today we're going to talk about the Côte de Bordeaux. So côte, of course, means slope. And when we think of Bordeaux, there's not a lot of slopes that we think of because it's a relatively low area, a lot of flat ground. But this designation was, this appellation actually was created to call attention to that. So here we see the map. So you see the city of Bordeaux there on the left. That's where I am standing in front of, in the Place. So that's the left bank of the Garonne River. And all of these appellations are to the right. So the right of the Gironde estuary up top, the right of the Dordogne River on the middle and bottom. And then you see some appellations that are actually between the two rivers. Entre-deux-Mers, which actually is between the two seas, but we'll cover that when we get there. So reds, whites, the Côte, you see stuff like Blaye Côte de Bordeaux, and you also see Blaye. Same geographical area, as is often the case, but with different rules and different restrictions. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So this is just a breakdown of the percentage under vine. So you can see that up in Blaye and Bourg, that's, that area's been around for a while. That's where a lot of the production's coming from, more than half. Then you have little scattered throughout the rest of the area. And this is percentage by production. So no surprises there. They pretty much stay the same.
So TJ, this is not comparative to all of Bordeaux. This is just inside this group of appellations?
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, this is just within these appellations. It's actually 13% of the area under vine of Bordeaux. So significant area. 90% red wines, 9 different appellations, depending how you classify them. But it's a lot of production. It's a lot of area and very varied as well. So it's I'll discuss why this exists in the first place, because there doesn't seem to be much commonality in the terroir other than the slopes themselves. So who's drinking the wines from here? A lot of it stays in France. It's a very good value wine for everyday drinking, but 20% is exported to the usual suspects. Although I don't know if Belgium always surprises me, Ron. I always forget that Belgium is a big consumer of French wines, but it makes sense because they're right there.
They're right there, and you can't drink beer all the time.
No.
And they export all their beer, so they left them with nothing to do but import wine, apparently.
I don't know. This is a question I just thought of. I don't know if they produce wine themselves in any significant quantities. I'm sure they do a little bit, but
I don't know. Why doesn't the slide have TJ and Ron? TJ and Ron are drinking these wines.
What percentage of the 20% do you think that we're consuming of these Côte de Bordeaux?
I don't think it fits on the slide, unfortunately.
they're not the easiest wines to find because, as you can see here, a lot of it stays domestic. And then of the 20% that's exported by volume, you're seeing that USA is third after that. So we're not seeing a lot of it yet, but I expect that will change in the future. So this is what it looked like before. On the left, 2008, you had 5 distinct appellations. And then you have down there Côte de Bourg, Blaye, and Grave de Vert. And then they merged those 5 under the Côte de Bordeaux umbrella, and they renamed them Blaye Côte de Bordeaux, Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux, Castillon Côte de Bordeaux, Franc Côte de Bordeaux, and the last one was Saint Foy Côte de Bordeaux. So why did they do this? Well, it's kind of a marketing thing, Ron. Bordeaux, when you think of Bordeaux, as we've discussed in past episodes, you really start to think about the biggies, right? You're thinking about the classified gross on the left bank. You're thinking about Pomerol. You're thinking about Saint-Emilion. Those are the wines that get all the attention. You have these little appellations that were really struggling to be noticed, especially not just among Bordeaux wines, but Bordeaux style wines in the New World that were very good value, coming from Chile, coming from Australia, coming from the US, coming from Argentina, lots of places, even New Zealand, South Africa. So they banded together basically to promote themselves as an alternative to that. They're still Bordeaux, very good quality, often share lots of the same terroir as the more well-known appellations, but at a much, much better value. So it was really to pool resources, to make it easy to understand, which I appreciate because Bordeaux is very confusing, hence this webinar series. They're trying to make it a little more easy to access these wines, to understand what makes them different, to understand what makes them the same, and to hopefully people will find them and consume them.
Yeah, I think that what you're really looking at here is them finally realizing that Côte de Blaye in any form whatsoever means nothing to the consumer outside of Bordeaux.
Right.
And so they needed to append the name Bordeaux to it just so that they could at least stand on the shelf and say, yes, we're still Bordeaux, to someone looking for Bordeaux. Because if you're looking for Bordeaux and it says Côte de Castillon on it, that's not really going to say Bordeaux to you as the everyday average wine buyer. And, you know, this is not illogical. It's very much actually a New World scheme, right? Like the most famous example of this is the number of wines in Napa Valley that still say Napa Valley, even though they could say something like Oak Knoll District, because Oak Knoll District isn't really the prime name to think of in Napa, and Napa sings to all consumers. So it's very logical. Lauren has given us a link to something on the Vivino site. So Lauren, if you could then post the purpose of that link, we can go from there.
Cool. That's interesting. I want to find out what that is. Yeah, that's a great point. Nobody knows, you know, so you see also Premiere. What does that mean? Is it better? Is it classified? And these names really were confusing to a lot of consumers. So
that's everybody's reference to the Belgian wines that are available on Vivino.
Oh, cool.
So thank you, Lauren. That's very kind of you. So I'm answering these live. I believe that all of our participants can see the answers once I answer them.
I'll have to check that out myself. So this is just another look at the group. So even though Blaye, Côte de Bourg, and Grave de Vert are not in the Côte de Bordeaux, they are sort of grouped together in this family by Bordeaux wines because it makes sense. They're in the same area. They're, you know, in some, if you look at, say, Blaye Côte de Bordeaux and Blaye, it reminds me a little bit of, you know, the Douro and Porto, you know, the same exact geographical boundaries, same grapes, different rules, different methods, different winemaking. And then down here in the bottom, you have the sweet wines group because these are appellations that are in the area specifically for sweet wines. So obviously these icons mean red. For the maroon, the color there, the greenish is white wines, and then the yellowish is sweet wines. They actually had another icon, Ron, for semi-sweet wines, and I just took that out because we don't need to make that distinction today.
Yeah, I think that that's a great plan.
So this is the latest in the Côte de Bordeaux. So just this gives us a little peek behind the curtain to what they were thinking as we were just talking about. You know, the Côte de Bordeaux appellation is easier for consumers to relate to. And that totally makes sense to me. And you have a lot of, if you think about, we've talked about this before too, the big historic houses, the chateau, have a distinct advantage. They have the money, they have the tradition, they have the recognition. These estates tend to be a little more modern, a little younger, a little more innovative, perhaps. I don't want to say they're new world in style because it's not fair, but very much willing to try new things while keeping tradition alive. And we talked about that too. I think it was the last episode, Ron, we talked about, you know, if you're a young winemaker and you're working at, one of the big chateaux, and then you want to have your own winery, you're not going to be able to buy it in Hoyac probably, but you can certainly start a chateau in one of these areas where it's a little bit more reasonable.
Or even an older winemaker who wants to do something for themselves. You know, they've worked their entire lives making wines that make other people famous, and they'd like a little piece of the pie.
Mm-hmm. And why shouldn't they get that piece of the pie? So this is a little bit of what makes these appellations special. So the vines are grown on south-facing and southwest-facing slopes, great sunshine, good air circulation. The drainage is enhanced by the slopes incline, which is very important in Bordeaux. We have to have good drainage, as we know, and a lot of clay limestone and some gravel, depending on the area. So clay limestone makes me think of Saint-Emilion. Gravel makes me think of the left bank. So a mix there. And this is telling you, in general, the breakdown of grapes. And we've talked about the grapes last time, what they do, what they add. So before we continue on this, Ron, I wanted to pose this question to you, because this came up as a Master of Wine exam question a few years ago. And I don't remember the exact wording, but
I'm sorry, I'm having a connection difficulty. I don't know if I can. What are you saying? You have a question? It sounds like a test. I'm sorry. I may have to leave now.
You fooled me there for a second. I thought we actually had technical difficulty. No, this is not a fact recall. This is an opinion, I guess. Are the best wines produced from grapes grown on sloped vineyards? I forget the exact wording, but that was the question that you had to answer.
Are the best wines grown on sloped vineyards? Well, I guess that would be highly dependent upon the grape variety you're choosing, right? Because I think if we just take Bordeaux out of the question, some of the great Gruner Veltliner of Austria is grown on flatland. If you leave Bordeaux in the conversation, there's not really much of a hillside on the left bank. You know, it's pretty flat, and we'd have a hard time arguing that those wines aren't great. And then there are other places around the world. Coonawarra is essentially a flat plain. Margaret River is essentially a flat plain. So I don't know. I think it's a wonderful philosophy that resulted from the idea that you grew your food on easily farmed land, and you grew your wine where grapes could grow because they'll grow anywhere. And I think that steep slopes are very advantageous for certain varietals and styles of wine, but I don't think they're the answer to greatness.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And like all MW exam questions, there's no, well, I wouldn't say all, but frequently there's no one right answer, right? So you have to say it depends, and then explore that. And I think the biggest thing that you just said is, if you're looking in the old world, these vineyards were established hundreds and hundreds of years ago on the land that wasn't suitable for anything else. And it was a tradition for a long time. You know, all those traditions, grapes have to be grown on sloped vineyards, grapes have to be grown in really poor, infertile soils, grapes have to do this. Well, not necessarily. They were, for very good reasons. And it doesn't mean that there's not sound reasons behind them, but it's not the whole truth. So this is just, we don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole for soils. And in fact, I took a few slides out exploring some of the other appellations, but I just wanted to show these because of the tremendous diversity of soils. We think of, you know, left bank gravel, right bank clay and limestone, and that's it. But within those very broad categories, there's all these little variations.
So is there an issue with like no schools or something in the Moron Basin? I mean, I just don't understand that reference at all. What's the Moron Basin?
The Moron Basin. Yeah,
Oh, Moron.
it doesn't mean
Everything sounds better in French.
Well, they have to be smart because they use the word fluviatile, which I had to look up. I said, why not fluvial? And fluviatile is related to a river. Fluvial is produced by a river. So very important distinction, I guess, there. I mean, just look at the variation in soils here, and then in this next one, just crazy. You know, so you really have to dig down deep. What do you want to plant where? What's best suited? You're looking at the soils, you're looking at the exposure, you're looking at how far up the slope. So a lot of different factors and a lot of different, very, you know, subtle, because we know that overall Bordeaux has a definite style, but very different, very diverse terroir. This is a much simpler illustration, of course, but I like it because it shows what the slope does. Even though it's a mild slope, you have that sandy silt, maybe even some clay and limestone up on top, and then the gravel, then you have nothing, then you have the alluvial, very fertile soils down by the river.
Yeah, and the cutaway picture there is an example of why Merlot is such a great grape for the majority of this area. Although, you know, they're growing it all, but that's definitely a Merlot-driven cutaway right there. That's
So this is just a quick tour. I have a slide at the end for people who want to go further exploring. And of course, this presentation will be up on our YouTube channel very soon. So you can really look at, I'm not going to obviously go through every single thing here. I just wanted to point out as we go by the different clay limestone soil here, different terroir. This is the Côte. So the Côte de Bordeaux is from all five, anywhere in the 5 appellations. That wouldn't be its own. Obviously, I think if you're Black Côte de Bordeaux only, then you would put that. But if you're sourcing from different vineyards, then you would put the Côte de Bordeaux as long as it meets the requirements. So I really debated, Ron, whether to put the tasting notes because I don't like telling people what they should be tasting. And this is from the Bordeaux website. So, but I decided to in the end because I want to know what they think these wines should taste like and what should we expect from those, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. And this isn't really a tasting note per se. It's a very large approximation of what to expect because tasting notes are about specific wines. And, you know, this is not a specific wine. It's a pretty big region they're talking about.
Yeah.
So.
But I guess we should expect some round structured wines. Okay, I see that. I know what you mean by the structure to get a little cabin there for some tannic structure. Merlot has structure as well. You don't want to say that doesn't. It's going to be rounder, and you're going to have some. They're fruit forward, I'm guessing, with some of that old world Bordeaux elegance. So we'll see. And this is their cute. I don't know if I'm assuming that you in the audience have already picked up on this cute little format that they use. This is a postcard from each of the appellations. So here we have, we're on the right bank of the Gironde River. So we're up towards the north. We're not down as the river split off into the Garonne and Dordogne. So a much more diverse topography up there. Constant air, almost constant air circulation thanks to nearby estuary. So that's important. And this surprised me too. I know this is the biggest area, but if you would ask me, you know, how many chateaux do you think are in that area? Individual chateau, I would say, oh, I don't know, 60, 70, 80, 430 with 3 co-ops. So I completely underestimated the number of folks up there in the size.
Yeah, and does memory serve me correctly? This is the first region planted to viticulture by the Romans, right? Wasn't Bly the first section?
Yeah, because if you remember, the left bank was all marsh, so there's nothing in the left bank, and they, in Bly and Saint-Emilion, that whole area. Good point. So a little bit of history there. And when you see these date established, that doesn't, obviously the Côte de Bordeaux appellation was more recent, but we're talking about the original appellation. Cadillac Côte de Bordeaux. Important here, very good sun exposure and drainage, gravel stones, clay limestone. Sold exclusively Chateau bottled. And you'll see too that they want people to know, not every appellation here is mentioning it, but they want people to know 10% of wines are produced organically. They're really stressing their sustainability and their commitment to, I guess, changing the perception that a lot of people have, especially for the less expensive Bordeaux, that they're, riddled with pesticides and herbicides. It's not the case.
So TJ, Mario has sent in a sort of a thought/question. I'll let you lead off on this. Am I right to think that these wines have improved a lot in the last 20 years?
Absolutely. I think we talked about this in a past episode where, again, you talk about the really well-known wines, the really well-known appellations. If you're in the classified growths, as you get up into I think even the Troisième Cru, it starts to become very expensive and almost unaffordable for most people. And forget the first growths. I don't even know where to buy them if I had the money, if my wife let me spend the money on them, which she would not. And there was a big, big gap. You had this mass-produced kind of plonk wine at the low end, and then these really growing more and more expensive wines at the top end, and nothing in between. And that is definitely not the case. As you note, Mario, the quality here has been going up and up and up. And I would say, relative to the best wines of the region, this has improved much more. Those wines are certainly, they're great. They, trying constantly to improve themselves. I'm not saying they're resting their laurels, but the leaps and bounds that this level has gone. So now we have a little bit of a middle ground. We have, really the Grand Cru of Saint-Emilion are still, very affordable. There's some great in the satellites, as we'll get into. And here at this level, we're talking, everyday wines that are, I don't know. I didn't look up the prices off the top of my head, but we're talking, probably in the $20 retail range for really well-made, pedigreed wine. So that, yeah, absolutely. What do you think, Ron?
I agree. The first few times I ran across them, it was more of a question of why would I sell wines from Côte de Bordeaux or Blaye or Cadillac Rouge when I can still afford to sell Petit Chateau from the other side, which people will recognize as Médoc and Blaye. And as I progressed in my career and the prices kept going up and up, and the 89 and 90 vintages happened, and all of a sudden normal wines become out of reach for people. It was an easy turn, right? And I agree with your assessment that when that kind of money starts to flow into other regions, even if it starts to trickle in, people improve. So what I first took note of was a producer named Taillac, Chateau Taillac over in Bourg. And I was tasting their wines back into the early 80s even, and they were already high quality wines. They were just relatively ignored. And then now they have a platform like all the producers in this appellation too.
Now, is the Bourg, is that, will they assimilate all the appellations around them? Is that what?
Yes, they will be assimilated. Yeah, even Médoc.
See who gets that one.
The Cutis will oversee it.
So here we are in Castillon Côte de Bordeaux. So here, just a couple things to point out. Lots of limestone. We're near the Dordogne River. 25% of wines are produced organically. Ooh, did I skip one?
Well, that's impressed. Now we're at 50% organically. 25% to 50%. That's serious.
So Franc Côte de Bordeaux, clay limestone soils. I love this when you hear a native French speaker say crasse de fer. It's very I'm mangling it, I'm sure, but that's fer is of course iron, ferrous soil. So it's that iron pan soil. 50%, with 2/3 of estates currently transitioning or undergoing a conversion towards organic production.
That's awesome. Ken sent in a note that he personally this weekend drank a 2000 Clos Chaumont, which was from this Côte de Bordeaux area. And he said he bought it as a future many years ago, and it still drinks well. So there you go. There's confirmation that there's way more in this appellation than just Thursday night wine.
Yes, that's a great point. So we're 21 years later from that vintage and still drinking well. That shows the quality. And I would say that the quality in those 2 decades intervening has gone up even more. So do not be afraid to, put some wines aside if you so choose. And then the most recent Saint Foy Côte de Bordeaux, 10% are produced organically. They note here they also make dry white wines as well as semi-sweet and sweet wines. I wonder, why do you think they make that big distinction, Ron, between semi-sweet and sweet? Is it to just further diversify their image?
I'm not sure, because the whole idea of a semi-sweet Bordeaux is sort of foreign to me because no one's ever showed me one in person. That halfway point just seems like no man's land to me, but they probably have a localized purpose for them. I mean, we certainly have a purpose for semi-sweet wines in the US, right? There's a huge market for them. So I'm assuming there's one that we just haven't tapped for their wines.
Yeah, I can't think of ever having one. I've definitely had sweet wines. I've had botrytized wines. I've had dry white wines, but I wouldn't describe any as in that middle ground, but apparently they're out there. So Côte de Bourg, important not to forget about them. Appellation produced in 15 different communes, so a much bigger area, and they will assimilate all appellations around them if given the chance. Temperate climate, well-balanced, elegant, big production, 354 wine growers, 4 co-ops. So a lot of these smaller appellations still have co-ops, which makes sense. Probably still a lot of small growers out there that do not bottle their own.
And to that point, in the audience, do not associate co-ops with poor quality wine. That is an old thought process. Mm-hmm. Sure, there are some co-ops out there who don't make great wine, but there's also some regular wineries out there that don't make great wine. So a lot of times the co-ops are the magical answer because they give the opportunity for people to make the potential of their vineyards that they could not do on their own.
Yeah, and a lot of the co-ops that I've been hearing about from different countries and different regions lately usually have some sort of incentive-based production method. So it's not that you just produce whatever and throw it into the mix. You are rewarded as a grower for your quality, for your yields, for your so there's a constant process of improvement. So it's actually, for the ones that I'm aware of, it's actually a very good thing. And here we have Grave de Verre. And that is our quick tour. I could easily probably do a half hour about each of these little appellations, Ron, but who's got the time for that? We need to cover an entire wine region in our webinar series, so we can't go down too deep. But if you would like to, there are websites for each of these areas. The Bordeaux Côte is a good website. I believe the bottom, this was actually copied from their presentation, but it looks like gravedeverre.com is probably correct, not Rave de Verre, which is a different thing, I'm sure. Right, that's for if you want to go to a party in the Verre area. But great resources.
What are the chances that's actually the right website? We have to check this out.
I don't know. I just noticed it right now. I'm looking at it, and I did not type that. I certainly make my share of typos, but that is a copy and paste from their presentations.
Well, if you're raving about the Grave de Verre, you'd have the Raves de Verre.
The wines are so good, you will rave about them.
Or they just happen to like all-night parties with questionable activities.
And the Côte de Bourg here has its own YouTube channel. So that's
Lauren has chimed in that she tried it, and yes, it's missing the G.
Ah, okay.
Isn't she fabulous? She's given us links to.
Yes, she's helping us very much. We appreciate it.
Links to crazy wines from Belgium. Checking typos from France for us. We're just gonna put her on the team. See if she wants to if she wants to co-lecture with us next week.
Yes, I have to send her the presentations ahead of time so she can catch these.
Love it. I love help from the audience. We have a smart audience. It's always nice to have a smart audience.
Yes, it is.
She says she'll only lecture on Italy.
That's our next web series.
Yeah, well, that would be fun. We have to, pretty soon we'll just do, a presentation every day of the week on a different topic. Well, we sort of do that, TJ, actually, but we don't do it audibly. We're creating stuff in the rest of the world all the time. Absolutely. All right.
So we are working our way through the 6 families of Bordeaux wines. And as I've said in the past, if you haven't checked out Bordeaux.com, that's where I'm getting a lot of this organization and a lot of resources there. They have great interactive maps. They have all kinds of fun stuff. So check that out. And next time, in 2 weeks from today, we will be covering our third. So we'll be at the halfway point of our 6 families.
Yep. And for those of you out there who are tuning in each week, pre-shipped on one week and Bordeaux show on the other week. I'm on vacation next week, so there will be no pre-shift, but we will reconvene on the 13th and have a great time talking about Bordeaux again.
But you know what folks could do if they're really missing next week? There's a whole slew of past videos on our YouTube channel they could check out if they're missing us. Winebow
YouTube, go to the playlist button and either hit the Bordeaux show or hit pre-shift, and you can go from there.
And that is any questions up there, Ron?
Just a thank you. They and Massimo asked what we just told them. Yes, and yeah, Massimo, all the past episodes are on Winebow YouTube playlist, The Bordeaux Show, as along with a lot of other great resources. So if you're out there in the audience and you're looking for some information in an easy to absorb format, meaning you can turn it on and listen to it, you might not have to watch it. Definitely head to our YouTube channel. The company has put a bunch of content up there over the last year, as is normal for, the average pandemic worldwide.
No, there's not just the Bordeaux show and pre-shift. There's Between Two Psalms. There's all kinds of producer videos. It's really fantastic. It's growing every day, and a great resource to find out all about wine.
Yeah, that's the other really great wine info lecture series is Between Two Psalms, and that's Jesse Becker and I handling that one, and we kind of wander around the world. The last one was Burgenland, right, TJ? Burgenland.
Yes.
So we talked all about the really cool wines of Austria from that section. So join us in all kinds of different ways, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. TJ, thank you for doing the research and getting through this with us, and we will see everyone later.